Well, hello everyone, and thanks for joining this free training Thursday. Today we will learn about rules-based calendaring and Amicus Attorney. My name is Anna, and I have here with me Dave Lamb from Amicus Attorney. This will be about a 30-minute free training, and we will answer any of your questions in the last 10 minutes. So feel free to input your questions in the GoToWebinar control panel at any time. With that, I'll let David take over. Hi, David.
Well, thank you very much, Anna, and thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Now, we all know that calendaring court rules can be very complex, to say the least, but the Amicus court rules feature lets you create, modify, and delete court rule-based events on your Amicus Attorney files. Now, a court rule defines a series of standard tasks with their deadlines for a particular legal action in a specific court, say federal, state, or county. Now, as I said, court rules can be complex, but using the Amicus court rules feature in Amicus will save you time and help ensure that no steps in executing a client matter file are missed. And to take advantage of court rules, your firm must, as I said, that's what a court rule is. Now, your firm must be licensed on a subscription basis, and you must have a subscription for one or more court rule sets. And also important is your Amicus holiday calendar must be up to date. So court rule events are treated as a special class of calendar events in Amicus. And a file may have one or more groups of court rule events on it, and each group contains a trigger event whose date determines the dates calculated for all of the other events in the group. An example of a trigger event could be a court appointment. Now, a group may also include one or more parent events whose dates determine the events of further dependent events called child events. And if a child event has two parent events, the rule determines whether it is the parent with the latest or earliest date that determines the child's date. Now, court rule events, of course, can be edited. They can be rescheduled. And firm member assignments on each of the events can be changed, and you can delete individual court rule events once they are in your calendar. Now, I mentioned holidays. Holidays are important because court rule event deadlines are based on court days and are calculated to avoid falling on your firm's observed holidays. Now, if holidays are not considered for that event, then they are calculated based on calendar days. So that's just a little bit about court rule events. So let's get to calendar court rules. So you can view the court rule sets that your firm subscribes to. And to do this, you must be an administrator. And so if you go into firm settings, under calendar, you will see court rules. Now, if you don't see court rules, yet you've subscribed to them, make sure that Enable Amicus Court Rules is checked. Now, also, I have checked Show All Court Rule Sets, including Unlicensed. The court rule sets I am licensed for are in bold. The available court rule sets, the ones I'm not subscribing to, are in gray. So if I uncheck that, this is a list of all of the rule sets that I have subscribed to. Now, down at the bottom, there is a by default. If calculated court rule events fall on weekends, what do you do? So do you schedule them anyway? Do you move them to Friday, or do you move them to Monday? I'm just going to set mine to move to Friday so that it gives me a chance to do that. Okay, so that is viewing the court rule sets that your firm has subscribed to. So let's talk about using the court rules to create the events on a file. So let's go into our Files module. And by the way, you can create court rule events on a file in the Files module or in the Calendar module, but I really recommend creating your events on the file. And we'll see why in just a moment. So let's open the blank vBittle file, and we'll just maximize that. And I recommend that you go to Events because your rules take the form of events in Amicus. and all file events. So I'm just going to delete that old one out of there, and that's gone. Yes. Okay. So we have no events in here. So what I'd like to do is I would like to apply the court rule events, all of the things that we have to do to prosecute this case. So we go to Actions, and you'll see that there is Court Rule. And next, we'll select Rules Set. Okay. In the Select Rule Set window, you'll see a list of your firm's available rule sets on the left. If there is already a rule set assigned to the file, you'll see the rule set listed on the right. Now, you can have multiple rule sets on a file, but you can only load one rule set on the file at one time. So let's select the rule set on the left, California Civil Procedure Rules, and shift it over. And now what we'll do is we'll click OK. Do you wish to create court rules using this rule set? Yes, I do. Click yes. Okay, so now many rule sets have subsets, and these are the subsets of that rule set here on the left. So select the rule set that I want. I'm going to just click Filed Complaint and click OK. All right. Now our Create Court Rule Events is here, and you'll see that it's based on this rule. And you will see that is on the top is the assigned file, blank v. Bittle. Now we can assign firm members and contacts to assign to the events. Now by default, the firm members assigned to the file will be assigned to the events. Contacts, if you wanted to assign a contact to the event here, you could as well. So you can edit this again just by selecting or deselecting firm members. The court rule reference, for example, you can add information, for example, whether the event relates to a plaintiff or a defendant, and you could edit this later. I'm going to do plaintiff. Okay. Now, under the to-dos section, you select how you want to schedule the start date for the to-dos created by the rule set. You can either enter today's date or a certain number of days before the deadline of each event. I would recommend that you do a certain number of days. Some of these rule sets have quite a number of events. I don't want them to all show up on my calendar today saying, 35 days, 45 days for a number of them. What I'd like to do is I'm going to get notification. I have them on my calendar 7 days before their deadline. Now, this does not affect the event's deadline at all. And down at the bottom, mark past to-dos done. If you check mark past to-dos done, any to-do whose calculated deadline is before today, so say for example you were putting in this this rule set, and there were some events that when calculated fall prior to today, it would mark them as done. So again, this would be helpful if you're applying the court rule in the middle of an ongoing action. Now under the Calculate tab, under the Calculate tab, we set the date of the trigger event. This is the date upon which all of the calculated dates will be based, and select the type of event. So this is an appointment. I'm going to say it starts at 9 to 10, and we can give this an event title. So I'm going to select the title, which is at court. Okay. Now, I'm also going to give it a date. This is in the future. So I'm going to set up our court date. I'm going to set this up for June the 20th. Okay. So we've given our trigger event a date. It is an appointment. You could also make it a to-do, of course. We've given it a title. Now, what happens if it falls on a weekend? Remember, in my preference back in firm settings, I said move to Friday, but for this specific file, I could change that if I want. So on a file by file basis, when you use the court rules, you can change what happens if it falls on a weekend. And now we're going to click calculate. So it's going to take all of the events in the court rule, and based on my trigger event, it's going to calculate the deadlines for all of the events. So here we go, calculate. All right, there it is. Now you'll see a list of all of the events. And you'll notice here we have 45 events selected. And you're going to see if it's a due, an appointment, you're going to see it in a kind of a, almost like a flowchart view of what is dependent upon what. Now, if I don't want one of the events in here, I'm just going to select anyone. Say, for example, I'm not going to be using that. I can uncheck that. That means that this will not create an event in my Amicus calendar. And so that gives us a nice little view. And of course, if I want to, I can collapse these, expand these, expand these. All right. So once I've taken a look at all of the events, and you can see plus 30 days, minus 5 days, all of the information here in this nice kind of flow chart. When I'm ready, I can create events. And this is going to create the events in my Amicus calendar. Okay, and where we had the list of from the court rules, these are now events on our Amicus calendar. And as I said, you can create these events in the calendar or on the file. The reason I recommend that you create the events on the file is we can see them all here. So this is each and every event. You'll see its deadline. You'll see its name. So here it is. And we can, again, we can open any of the events and we can see the details of it. If I wanted to, for example, take Della off of that event, click OK. Click OK, and for that individual event, Della is removed. So you have control over it. Remember, these are now events on your Amicus calendar. Okay, what if we need to reschedule an event? If you want to do it right now, you can select the event and you can open it, of course, and you could reschedule it. So you could reschedule the date to the 5th. Click OK, and that's done. And that reschedules that individual event only. If there are child events that are of this event, it will not reschedule them. So let's select an event. And right here, here's another event. Actions, court rule, modify court rules. So now that they are calendar events, we have the ability to modify them here. And this is where you can actually change the scheduling. So this event, reschedule the selected event. What that's going to do is very much what we did just in Amicus, is it's going to reschedule the individual event or reschedule the entire series. So what this is going to do is we're going to move it to, say, the 12th. And we're going to say, okay, reschedule them. So it's going to take all of these events and it's going to reschedule those events. So it calculates them all out. Now, when you look at our events here in the rule set, you'll see that we have a little R. That means that it was rescheduled. The R means rescheduled by the court rule set. U means it was rescheduled by the user, and that was the event that we rescheduled. Our court rules engine rescheduled all of the rest. I click modify events, and the events are changed in our Amicus calendar. So you could see how we can modify a singular event just like we would in Amicus, or we can modify one event and have the court rule set engine modify the timing, the deadlines of all of the other events that are child events to it. Now, you're also able to do these in the task module. You're able to do these in the calendar module. And you can, certain fields in the court rule events are editable in Amicus. So for example, I want to change, for example, the title. I'm just going to say date to set instead of date set. Okay, click OK, and it's done. So you can do certain modifications like that. So we change the title. Again, we can change the individual date of an event by changing the date here. If we do it this way, again, it will only change this individual event and not any child events. To change it as a child event, we have to go to Actions, then we have to go to Court Rule and modify Court Rules. So 2 ways to modify the event depending on how you're going to do it. Okay, changing the deadlines of an event. Let's go in here and change the deadline. Change the deadline to the 12th. Click OK. Now you're attempting to reschedule a court rule event. Rescheduling in this manner will not recalculate dependent events. To avoid this result, use the modify court rule events function. Do you wish to continue? Again, if I say yes, it's going to modify the deadline for this event only. If I want to change and recalculate the rest of them, again, I go into Actions, into Court Rules, and modify Court Rules. And what we can do is we can then reschedule the deadlines for all of these events. So again, 2 ways to modify the events. So what happens now on our calendar is that we can mark these done. These are just events on our calendar. So for example, we can start off with June, start off October, we can just mark it done. Do I wish to create a time entry? These are events on the calendar. So now we treat them just like any other event. So that kind of, in a nutshell, is how we can use court rules to calendar these very complex events to comply, with our legislation. Now, you can, if you need to, you can have events from another rule set, and that's where you would go in and do Actions, Court Rule, select your rule set, and you could select another rule set, and again, they would have the same abilities that we have on this rule set. Just an FYI though, that they don't interact together. They would be 2 separate rule sets for 2 different sets of events. So yes, you can run multiple court rules on a single file. You just load another set. Now, a couple of FYIs, you cannot change a to-do to an appointment or vice versa. So that's just one thing to keep in mind, but generally that's not a big deal. Now, a reminder for everyone, currently there is a special on from Amicus Next, is you can purchase 5 rule sets for $25. All you need to do is contact your account rep at Amicus Next. So you can do a few more things with rescheduling, but I wanted to show you today really how simple it is to use the rule sets to take out much of the complexity of calendaring in Amicus. So with that, what I'd like to do is throw it open to any questions, and I'd like to remind you to use the question panel in your GoToWebinar control panel. So I'm just going to give people just a couple of minutes. Okay, I have one question. How are rules updated? Good question. They're updated automatically behind the scenes. So you don't have to do anything. There is an email that goes out to everyone to say, hey, these rules were updated, and they're all done behind the scenes. And yes, so you don't have to worry about that. There's nothing for you to do. It's all done automatically. And is the 5 for 25 applied to all your users? Yes, once you subscribe to Abacus Court Rules, these rule sets are available to every user. They're firm-wide. So you don't purchase, a rule sets for each individual user. Your firm purchases the rule sets. And one other question, do you have to install anything? No, you don't. It is done with your license. And so when Amicus updates in the evening, your rule set would become available. You would get, of course, a notification that your rule set's available, and they would just be there. So there's no other software to install. And is there a one-time fee? The best thing to do at the moment, if you're interested in rule sets, is to contact your account rep. They can fill you in on exactly how you can subscribe to the rule sets that are available, and they'll answer all of your questions. Okay. All right, I'm just going to see if there are any other questions. And we're going to just, okay. Okay, so if there aren't any more questions, you can always get more training and any support you need by visiting abacusnext.com. And you can also sign up for webinars at abacusnext.com. And so, Anna, that's about it for me. I think I've answered everyone's questions.
Well, thank you so much, Dave, for hosting today's webinar, and thank you again, everyone, for joining. A recording of today's webinar will be made available to you shortly, so be on the lookout, and don't forget to sign up for next week's free training, and enjoy the rest of your week.